Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the New York Best webinar entitled Energy Storage Outlook in New York State. I'm just going to run over a few of the logistical items for the webinar. First of all, please note that your phones are muted. Please type any questions you may have anytime throughout the webinar in the chat box supplied on the side of your screen. Questions will be addressed at the end of the webinar, and we'll get to as many as possible. After the webinar, there is a survey that will appear on your screen. We would appreciate it if you took a moment to supply some feedback on today's webinar. And lastly, today's recording and slides is available upon request. Please just email info@ny-best.org. Today's presenters include Dr. William Acker, Executive Director of New York Best, Denise Sheehan, Senior Advisor to New York Best, and John Cerveny, Director of Resource Development for New York Best. I will now hand it over to Dr. William Acker.
Thanks, Alyssa. Hello, everyone. Welcome, New York Best members and guests. For those of you who aren't familiar with New York Best, we are a nonprofit industry association that was created in 2010 to advance the energy storage industry and establish New York State as a global leader in the industry. We do this through a number of different actions, primarily through acting as a resource for information and collaboration, advancing the acceleration of commercialization, and through educating policymakers in advocacy, and through promoting New York's world-class assets. We will certainly be very happy to talk to you further about New York Best's activities on today's call, and would welcome people that are not familiar with New York Best to get more involved and learn more about us on our website. On today's call, we will be going over the highlights of 2014. We will also be talking about the New York State initiatives that are advancing the energy storage industry, and we will also be talking about the particular markets in New York State, and then ending on a session where we talk about the priorities for New York Best in 2015. Now, I don't usually start a webinar by talking about a Super Bowl commercial, but in this year's Super Bowl, there was a very interesting commercial by BMW for the i3 electric car, and I thought the reactions to it were quite insightful for our industry. For those of you who saw this, the commercial featured Katie Couric and Brian Gumbel, and it contrasted their time in the 1990s where they were on television and talked about the internet and speculated about what this newfangled thing was, the internet, and what email was, etc., clearly not appreciating at all how transformative it would be at the time, to them sitting in the new BMW i3 and talking about a car without a gasoline engine under the hood. The commercial did a very nice job of really bringing forward the transformative nature of technology and how rapidly literally everything can change. I was at a Super Bowl party with my wife, and as I said, the reactions were very, very insightful. The reactions ranged from, that is amazingly cool, it's great that electric vehicles have made it to the point where they're on Super Bowl commercials, to what was that? I'm not familiar with this at all. But to the most common reaction, which was a lot of skepticism about whether the cost could ever get to where it needs to be mainstream. And this reaction about cost of electric vehicles and about batteries in general is a reaction that we hear a lot in our industry, and it's a reaction that we hear when we talk to regulators and policymakers on the electricity side. When we talk to them, they frequently are quite familiar with the benefits of energy storage, the potential benefits, what could be happening on the grid, but are skeptical as to whether costs could ever get there, and are frequently informed with old data. So I thought I'd start today's webinar with a graph from Citigroup that came out in their recent investment trends report that was published a few weeks ago. This graph shows the historical price decline of lithium-ion batteries in consumer electronics applications and in the electric vehicle applications. And as you can see, the price has been declining quite rapidly, and that's really due to two things. It's due to continued increases in the technology, improvements in technology, and the scale of manufacturing that's being employed. One of the things that I think is very important from 2014 is this trend is continuing, and the confidence in the future trend is getting greater and greater. Most people are predicting very significant continued reductions, not just for lithium-ion, but for many other technologies. Now, for those of you in the renewable energy space, this graph looks remarkably familiar. This graph looks almost exactly like a solar power graph, a solar energy price reduction that we've seen over the past few years. So if you look at a solar power price reduction, and if I showed you the actual price for PV panels, it would have that curve that you saw in the last graph, but this is actually the levelized cost of energy from solar panels. And what you're seeing here, this report is from the Global Commission on Climate and the Economy, is the price approaching grid parity, meaning when the electricity from the solar panels is as cheap as electricity from conventional sources. And in fact, the little green bar you see in the lower right is a data point for the best on-grid large-scale solar project in 2014. The dotted lines you see are the range from fossil fuel generation of the cost of energy. And you can see the historical trend heading toward that dot. And in fact, during 2014, we hit parity for the grid for, as I said, the best project on the grid. And if you move away from wholesale and look at retail power, you're seeing that we are reaching grid parity for solar. Bloomberg Energy Analysis reported that we reached it for 10 states in the United States and projects that in 2016, 36 states will have grid parity, meaning that the price from solar power will be equal to or lower than the grid electricity costs. So if you think about what that means, it means that we're now in a position where we're going to have the lowest costs coming from renewables. We're going to have clean, no greenhouse gas electricity generation. We're going to have no fuel supply risk, no fuel cost risk. All of this is wonderful news. We all recognize, though, the pitfall in what I was just saying, which is that all of these items, renewable energy, wind, solar, all are non-dispatchable resources. In order to reach wide-scale penetration, we need to have a way to time-shift the energy. We need to have storage. Now, there's another piece of very good news in a projection from the Citigroup report they issued a few weeks ago, which is that they're projecting that in 2020, the payback for solar plus storage will be actually better in years than it is for solar alone today, and it's already cost-effective today. So this is very, very exciting and something that's incredibly important to our industry and something that we need to make happen. We need to achieve that goal in order to truly open the renewable energy field. And when you look at that, that also means opening a lot of other fields, because obviously, as we see the cost reductions of batteries improve, all other forms of energy storage improve, that affects other sectors as well as the grid sector. Now, in 2014, a major emphasis on energy storage was in the capacity, resiliency, and grid integration markets, and we believe that will continue. We're also seeing in the U.S. that states are driving this transformation, and we're seeing major steps from a number of the key states in the country. And we're also seeing major steps towards a Grid 2.0 or an advanced grid, a new kind of grid, and we'll talk about the Rev initiative here in New York State. Now, switching gears back to transportation for a moment, during 2014, we also have seen good improvements in the electric vehicle segment. Obviously, these are still very small percentages of vehicle sales, but plug-in hybrid and plug-in electrics, the plug-in market vehicle sales nearly doubled last year to about 250,000 vehicles. We're also seeing many more models. And we're seeing infrastructure growth that John will talk a little bit about on the electric charger side. We're also starting to see hydrogen infrastructure being put in for fuel cell vehicles in Japan, Germany, and some in California, and we're looking at that here in New York. I mentioned fuel cell vehicles because we also are at a very exciting point in the fuel cell vehicle space. For years, we've seen prototype vehicles. Now we're actually seeing commercial production vehicles. Shown the lower left of this graph is chart is the Toyota Mirai, which is a future in Japanese, that is being marketed for $57,000 and is a real commercial production vehicle for fuel cell based, and a number of other competitors are coming and bringing vehicles into the space. Additionally, we're seeing increased focus on the benefits of energy storage to the heavy-duty transportation market, coupling between transportation and the electricity infrastructure and electricity grid. That are very exciting new opportunities in the energy storage space. So If I move forward to what's happening here in New York State, we have the Reforming Energy Vision, which is our work with led by the Public Service Commission to change the electricity grid and incorporate many new aspects into the grid. We have a $5 billion investment happening in clean energy through the Clean Energy Fund. We have the Indian Point Contingency Plan, which is a NYSERDA New York Con Ed incentive program that John will be talking about. And we also are seeing very large related economic development programs, which are helping to link industrial and economic growth with the clean energy sector. Denise will be talking more about each of these sections in her part coming up shortly. I'll just take another moment to highlight a few of the key accomplishments of NYBEST during this year. We have opened the BEST Testing Commercialization Center in April. This is a test laboratory commercialization center that brings testing resources to our members across a wide array from single cells up to very large systems. Here are a couple of pictures of the laboratory. On the upper left here, you see cyclers along with the enclosures where the testing articles are put. On the upper right, you see walk-in environmental chambers along with very large cyclers. These are up to 250 kilowatt, 1,000 volt channels that can test full-size systems in the walk-in environmental chambers from a range of -40 to +85 degrees C. The lower right shows a picture closer up. And of course, there are single cell and many other testing articles there. To the lower left are mobile testing equipment that goes out into the field that can certify in-field for energy storage devices. So we're very excited about the opening of this laboratory. It's been heavily used over the course of the year, and we encourage anyone with testing needs to reach out to us about that. We also have been working with Rochester Institute of Technology to open a prototyping center. This is a dry room with pouch battery cell production equipment in it. This allows for researchers to test their batteries in real formats. That will be opening on March 6th. We also have activated our supply chain resource on our website. We spent a lot of work this year on educating and driving New York State programs that Denise will be talking about. During the year, we've held 5 conferences and 4 webinars with over 1,000 participants. Members that presented at our investment forums that we have annually have now raised over $100 million in private equity, and our membership grew to over 140 organizations. In addition, we've continued to provide direct assistance to our members. We do a lot of work in helping to facilitate business relationships and providing information and working with members both as directing funding resources with NYSERDA as well as helping in funding. So we've continued to have a lot of impact in the industry, and we'll be talking more at the end of the seminar about what we'll be doing in 2015. Our next section will be presented by Denise Sheehan. Denise will be talking about what is going on in New York State, and then John Serby will talk particularly about the markets. So let me turn it over to Denise.
Great. Thanks so much, Bill. Hello, everyone. As Bill said, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening in New York State. I'm going to talk about 4 of the major areas of focus for NYBEST and where we see opportunity for energy storage. And as a result, NYBEST as an organization is putting a lot of emphasis. The first is the Reforming the Energy Vision initiative, also known as Revs, the Clean Energy Fund, a new proceeding at PSC in relation to demand response tariffs, and then lastly, some proposals from Governor Cuomo for economic development. So first, I'll spend a little time talking to you about Revs, our Reforming the Energy Vision. This is an initiative most of you, if you're in New York and you're involved in energy, you've heard about this. Those of you who are new to New York and new to the energy scene, in New York. This is a big initiative that began last spring. The purpose really is to create a power grid of the future and to forever change the way consumers buy and use energy. It's an initiative that began with our Public Service Commission, and they are working to develop new policies that will encourage and reward consumers to use new technologies, new clean technologies to control energy use. One of the sub-goals, if you will, is to increase the penetration of distributed energy resources like storage, solar, combined heat and power, but to do it through market-based mechanisms. It really is focused on reducing emissions, increasing efficiency of the grid, and the resiliency of the grid. And I think everyone recognizes that it really has the potential to revolutionize the electric grid in New York State. This next chart is actually a nice illustration of really what the future of energy in New York would look like under Revs. And I have to give a shout out to NYSERDA. This is their chart that they presented at a recent forum in January. But I think it shows in a nutshell what the energy system of yesterday and somewhat of today looks like with respect to large power plants providing centralized power through a central T&D system into factories, homes, and buildings. The future system under Rev would be obviously a more decentralized system with clean energy resources and energy being delivered directly to homes, businesses, and factories. We especially like the images of storage on this chart. So I think again this is a great snapshot in terms of what is envisioned for the future under Rev. So just to speak to the sort of nuts and bolts of the Reforming Energy Vision initiative, it's proceeding really under two major tracks. And track one, which is where most of the work has been done since the spring, is really focused on some of the policy level decisions and the system design issues. NYBEST has been heavily engaged in the track one proceedings, which went on over the summer. There were different work groups established, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Track two, which is the second track of Rev, is the state's regulatory practices. And it's really, PSC will be in this part of the proceeding looking at different regulatory elements like tariffs, market design, incentive structures, and how they can be modified to incentivize different utility practices that will promote and achieve the goals of Rev. So, again, as I mentioned, so far there's been most of the emphasis and all of the work has been on track one. Again, we participated very heavily in conjunction with NYBEST members in working with the Department of Public Service staff, who this summer put out a straw proposal and submitted it to the Public Service Commission, a straw proposal that laid out sort of that high-level policy conceptual look at what Rev would look like. One of the key concepts in that straw proposal was that the existing investor-owned utilities would serve as the distributed system platform, and through that, the utilities would be actively managing and coordinating with a wide range of distributed energy resources. Again, the overall goal is to improve system efficiency, empower customer choice, encourage clean generation and energy efficiency. So I want to spend a couple minutes talking to you about how NYBEST has approached Rev and the types of what our feedback and input has been into the PSC process. In general, NYBEST has been very supportive of the Rev initiative and of PSC's efforts to transform the electric industry to achieve go back to that image I showed earlier of that distributed a more decentralized system that promotes clean, reliable, affordable, and an efficient system. We did share a great deal of information with DPS staff. We provided information on the different products and services that energy storage provides, which I think we believe helped shape some of the information that was included in the staff straw proposal. We did provide comments and highlight some concerns or areas of where more needs to be done, obviously on behalf of energy storage. And I tried to encapsulate those here. If anyone's interested in actually seeing what our comments have been, they are available on our website under the policy tab, and feel free to dig in or just reach out to us, and I'm happy to answer any questions. But obviously, some of the key things for energy storage are ensuring that the value of energy storage is captured and that is recognized, and all of the different things, all of the different services that energy storage provides and can provide, whether it's demand response, energy and capacity, different grid services, that those services are recognized and the value of those can be monetized through the new systems being designed by PSC. One of the other things that we weighed in on is the role of utility as the DSP and ensuring that market power isn't too overly concentrated and allow for a level playing field, an open and transparent competitive process under which energy storage can play a major role. For benefit cost analysis framework, we provided comments to the department and to PSC that we want to make sure that the multiple benefits of energy storage are captured, and that the framework for the benefit cost analysis is one that's done through an independent methodology that is transparent and standardized. We also commented that we want to make sure that DER's distributed energy resources such as storage are fully evaluated prior to the selection of any generation, transmission, or distribution asset. And then finally, with respect to tariffs, which were mentioned in the straw proposal but not in depth, we weighed in that we support the concept of tariffs for demand response. We wanted to make sure there's a role for energy storage, and we did comment to PSC that there wasn't a lot of information included in the straw proposal about the design and application of those tariffs. So where are we now? So right now, PSC is holding public statement hearings across New York State on Revs to solicit more feedback and help round out the Commission's decision with respect to the Track 1 policy decisions. PSC in December actually issued a statement that they are actively seeking Revs demonstration projects. So for those of you who are interested in engaging or have some projects that you want to consider, feel free to contact us and we can help you and direct you in the right way, in the right places. PSC has also established 2 working groups to assist the staff, platform technology and markets, and as we have in the past, NYBEST will be engaging with those. The PSC Track 1 policy decision is expected in early 2015. That's as precise as we've received information on. My expectation is that will be after the public statement hearings are concluded and staff have had a chance to sort of mull through what those comments were in those hearings. And then the Track 2 regulatory part of the proceeding, a straw proposal from staff on that part is expected in the second quarter of 2015. We will continue to play an active role, and we obviously, any NYBEST members who are interested in working with us, please, again, feel free to contact us, and I'm happy to bring you into the fold. The next major thing that we're focused on is the Clean Energy Fund. This is a key piece and a pillar of the Revs proceeding. NYSERDA has been directed by PSC to propose a Clean Energy Fund proposal, which they did this fall. They submitted a draft proposal to PSC for a 10-year, $5 billion program, the goals of which are delineated here. But again, the goal is to have the Clean Energy Fund work in tandem to achieve the goals of Revs, of a competitive market, to overcome barriers for these distributed energy resources that are clean, use incentives to strategically bridge from the current state to a new state of a more competitive, decentralized market. And ultimately, NYSERDA and PSC are interested in accelerating the pace of innovation. So the Clean Energy Fund is essentially what NYSERDA is proposing is to transition from their existing programs, the RPS, Renewable Portfolio Standard, the Systems Benefit Charge, SBC, and the EEPS programs that were focused more on projects and move to a more holistic approach that's more market-based. So in that transition, NYSERDA has proposed 4 major portfolios for their approach for funding going forward under the Clean Energy Fund. And those portfolios are listed on this chart. They include market development, which is really, I think, intended to work in conjunction with the PSC proceedings with respect to how do we actually create the right markets and incentives to animate consumer demand for clean energy. The second portfolio, which is the technology and business innovation portfolio, I think I would characterize this as the sort of more traditional R&D aspects of NYSERDA, where NYSERDA really wants to work on bringing projects through the commercialization sort of field and bringing them to full commercial markets. And then lastly, the last 2 I think you may have heard a little bit about is the New York Green Bank, which is looking to work to transform, to leverage private sector funding to help these products reach more of a critical mass in the marketplace. And then lastly, the New York Sun program is also part of the Clean Energy Fund. So those are the 4 major portfolios in the Clean Energy Fund as it stands right now. Next steps for the Clean Energy Fund is NYSERDA will be submitting a supplement to its proposal, which is intended to delineate and provide more detail around how those portfolios will be used and provide more information and detail around their original proposal. We'll be sharing this with our NYBEST members once it's released, and we'll be looking for your feedback and input and your thoughts on what NYSERDA has proposed. Comments on NYSERDA's proposal will be due on March 20th, so we will again be submitting comments on the proposal at that time. Reply comments are due April 10th, and then PSC is expected to make a decision on the Clean Energy Fund by mid-2015. So the third item of focus for us as we start 2015 is a new proceeding on demand response tariffs. PSC actually commenced this proceeding in December, and it's moving on a very fast track. It's actually being moved ahead of Revs as something that the PSC feels they can move ahead on. PSC has actually directed the DPS staff to develop distribution-level demand response programs and other dynamic load management programs. Staff is going to be working with stakeholders and utilities on those programs over the course of the next few weeks. The focus for this is really to use the Con Ed demand response program as a model, and that new programs would be implemented by the summer of 2015. So the focus for this effort is really on those utilities and territories which do not currently have demand response programs. The utilities are going to be required to present draft plans on February 20th, and then file tariffs to implement those programs by March 16th, 2015. So again, this is a very fast track. We're seeking input from our members on their experience with the Con Ed programs in particular, and so that we can provide PSC and DPS staff with some concrete input. And then our last area of focus, which you can see we're going to be very busy, is on the economic development side here in New York. Governor Cuomo's proposed budget for 2015-16 includes some notable economic development initiatives, which are on top of some of the ones that already exist, which are our Startup New York program, et cetera. But in terms of new programs and new areas of emphasis, the governor has proposed $1.5 billion for an upstate economic development revitalization fund. There are 7 regions of the state that will be eligible to compete for $500 million each. This will be run in tandem with the state's Regional Economic Development Council program, that NYBEST and several of our members have been very successful in receiving grant funding through. So this is an exciting opportunity for NYBEST and for our members. It's focused really on capital infrastructure projects that are really geared towards job development and private investment and community revitalization. The second piece of the governor's proposed budget that's exciting for energy storage is $65 million that's proposed for Brookhaven National Lab, which would provide expanded research capabilities and battery testing capabilities at Brookhaven National Lab. So we're very excited about that. And then lastly, of interest for our members is a $20 million for a new 76 West program, which is intended to be a clean energy business competition that will bring new jobs to, and really clean energy jobs to New York's Southern Tier, which for those of you who don't know what the Southern Tier is, it's areas like Binghamton and the southern western edge of New York State. So that's it for me, and now I'm going to hand it to John Cerveny, who's going to talk a little bit more about the various programs, other programs going on in New York in transportation and at a regional level.
Great.
John.
Thanks, Denise. Good afternoon, everyone, or morning or evening, depending where you're calling from. Wanted to spend some time here reviewing some of the activities that have gone on in the past year and that will certainly continue into this year that are providing access to some of the really strong markets, large and growing markets in New York State for energy storage. And I'll start really by focusing on some of the initiatives around transportation. Many of you may be familiar with the Charge in New York program. This has been in place now for a little over a year, and it set a goal of, you can read here, but putting 30 to 40,000 EVs on the road by 2018. We're now at a point in the state where we have over 11,000, and certainly from the time that program was initiated to now, there are many more choices in the EVs on the road, and along with the next bullet here, include a growth in the number of charging stations or EV support equipment that have been installed in the state. We're starting to see a really strong infrastructure for these vehicles. The next point here, the 8-state collaboration. This is a multi-state plan for zero-emission vehicle adoption. It's really EVs and hydrogen vehicles. And the goal here is 3.3 million of these vehicles on the road by 2025. New York is a leader among this collaboration and has committed resources and support to achieving the goals. This process is modeled after initiative that was in the 90s that ended up with the new vehicle emissions, lower fleet emission requirements for gas-powered vehicles. So there's this is a path that has been productive in the past and is now being directed toward EVs and zero-emission vehicles. New York State has it's still in place electric vehicle truck voucher incentive fund, which provides payment for the incremental cost of clean vehicles. These are Class 8 and Class 3 private and public fleet vehicles. Similarly, New York City has an incentive fund for EVs, for hybrids and compressed natural gas vehicles. And you can see some of the details on the fund here. The final bullet, you can get more information about all of these at that website address. I'm going to move here onto stationary storage opportunities and some of the growth in the market opportunities here in New York, particularly focused in the Con Ed service territory. It's where some of the demand is most acute, and the market opportunity is certainly significant. So with these programs that I'm about to talk about, we're seeing real traction being made toward storage in the city and in Con Ed's territory. First is the demand management program. This is a procurement effort that was driven by the potential closing of Indian Point nuclear reactor. So among the ways to address that shortfall if the reactor came offline was a set of initiatives to procure permanent peak summer load reduction. And I'll go into some more detail about this program in a minute. And then the Brooklyn Queens Demand Management Program is another initiative that really is on the utility side and customer side, ways to meet very significant summer overload in some of the areas in Con Ed's territory. Talk about that some more too. So the drivers, speaking of driving, I'm running this a little too fast. Energy storage in buildings. So if you look at the demand management program, that's really what we're talking about. These are behind-the-meter assets in installations and facilities in Con Ed's territory. And some of the benefits that storage brings to the table in these kinds of applications are listed here. Storage can provide all of these kinds of benefits and also serve in many ways as a backup power source, an emergency power source. You can think of it as the generator that helps pay its way by performing valuable service every day. Integration of renewables is another role. So there really are, when you have a storage system sited at a battery, there's a number of things it can do. And we're finding applications in many places in the city for these systems. I will say that siting of the systems is a work in progress and has received a lot of attention and a lot of good efforts from members of the New York City Department of Buildings, Fire Department of New York, and others who are focused on helping to site these systems. Now, these are a set of new technologies that are performing new services, and the fire code and the building code don't currently postulate those use cases for these systems. So there is a site-specific approval process that systems go through. And I can tell you that there have been many, many hours put into figuring out that process and in attempts to streamline that process. There's a few photos of systems that are installed in New York or that are representative of systems that are on their way into New York City. You can see a variety of technologies and different sizes. There are opportunities galore. Walk through Manhattan and look at all the buildings, and you get a feel for just how many opportunities there are in the city for storage. So a little bit on the details of the demand management program. This is an incentive for energy storage. Provides $2,100 per kilowatt for electrical for battery storage, $2,600 for thermal. There are bonuses for different larger size systems. One of the really challenging aspects of this is that these systems have to be installed by June 1st, 2016. So there's a clock running on this program. I think it's important to characterize this as an early and first effort in this area, and I'll talk more in a minute about another program. But I talked about the siting challenges that have been met, and in large part, systems that are attempting to access this program are working through those issues. So first time is always hard, and I'd say that this program has been extremely helpful in focusing attention on the opportunities, on getting people on the ground in New York, and really working through the challenges that are inherent in doing new things. One of the requirements here, because of the nature of this program and trying to solve that shortfall of capacity if Indian Point came offline, is that it's a procurement of load reduction. So it's a permanent load reduction from 2 to 6 p.m. And in operating a system that way, it makes it more of a challenge to find revenue in those other outside of 2 to 6 p.m. hours. So people are working their way through the economics of these as well, and we and others have collected information and fed that back into both Con Ed and NYSERDA, and continue to work with them on ways that we can design programs in the future, or possibly modify existing programs to make them work even better. So our voices are being heard. Now on to the second program today, the Brooklyn Queens Demand Management Program. And this is an effort to procure all kinds of demand-side management initiatives or methods that would meet summer overload on feeders in Brooklyn that is projected to become 69 megawatts. So it's a really significant summer shortfall. And over to if I can get there. So the challenge that Con Ed faces here is that the traditional methods of upgrading a substation that would be the business as usual way to meet this shortfall, because of the challenges faced in acquiring land and building out new feeders, the cost estimate for that traditional approach is $1 billion with a B. So this program seeks cost-effective alternatives that would provide 52 megawatts of utility and customer-side solutions. Con Ed issued an RFI, request for information, back in July and received 78 responses. They're reviewing those responses and making decisions about path forward. The Public Service Commission did approve their petition back in December, and that approval included 11 megawatts of utility-side non-traditional solutions, which could, in fact, include storage. So I think the opportunity there is emerging and evolving, but it's certainly an area to keep a focus on for our industry, and will become a very significant opportunity, I think, in the near future. Also like to touch on initiatives on Long Island. PSEG Long Island is now the operator of the electrical system on the island. The predecessor, LIPA, issued an RFP for generation storage and demand response back in 2013. And in that, they requested bids for up to 150 megawatts of energy storage resources that would be required to provide full power for 12 hours. So very significant RFP related to storage, and a number of our member companies and leading companies, I'm sure, submitted toward that opportunity. I think what can be said here is that it continues to be under review by PSEG Long Island, and we, in the interim, have the next bullet on Utility 2.0 plan, which really is a comprehensive plan that they were required to file with the PSC back in July of last year. Interested parties, including NYBEST and some of our members, submitted comments, and the revised plan has just been filed with the Public Service Commission at the end of January. Among the initiatives there's a $15 million budget item for a 5 megawatt, 5-hour energy storage system, and identification of significant funding and opportunities for combination solar and storage projects. So stay tuned, I guess, is also the message there. There will be near-term efforts on Long Island that involve storage. PSEG is also has launched an integrated resource planning effort. They'll be seeking stakeholder input. We will monitor this process and reach out to members and others throughout the course of this, what's expected to be an 18-month process. And again, this is the way that we keep the voice of the industry in on these conversations and make sure that storage is understood and represented accurately in the proceedings. I intended to make one comment back on the building side. If you're interested in building sited systems in New York City, there's a resource that I'd like to point you to that is gridmarket.com. Gridmarket, all one word. It's a site that's been supported by NYSERDA. It is driven and initiated by Agrion, and provides a wealth of information about energy storage systems. It shows sites in New York City that currently have storage in place or that have proposed storage, and provide some information about the process of siting storage as well. So it's a good resource, and I recommend that you take a look. With that, I think I'll wrap my part, and it's back to Bill.
Great. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. I will just spend a moment kind of in wrap-up before we take Q&A on some of the key priorities for NYBEST in 2015. We, of course, are a member organization, and serving our members is foremost in our mind, so we will continue to provide all of our high-quality member services, on which you see here. We encourage you to reach out to us and engage with us as we go forward throughout the year. Denise outlined a lot of the work with the government sector. As we can see, this is an incredible opportunity. The electricity industry rules are being rewritten in a very dramatic fashion that will offer great opportunities for the energy storage industry and distributed resources writ large. We will continue to engage on all of these fronts with the Public Service Commission, NYSERDA, New York ISO, the utilities legislature, et cetera. We encourage your input to us because that's how we can bring forward the best ideas. So please do continue to engage in these areas. I want to talk particularly about one of the supporting efforts for all of our activities, which is a new 2015 energy storage roadmap. In 2012, we published the first energy storage roadmap for New York State. This year, we are updating that document, particularly to put a finer point on and more clarity on the barriers and challenges and pathways and solutions around those. We're structuring the document so that we are looking at many markets and areas within energy storage, but we will make subgroups for 6 areas that will bring forward key information, 3 in the grid and 3 in mobile and transportation applications. On the grid side, we have on-grid and renewable integration. We have microgrid and platform, and we have behind the meter. And in mobile and transportation, we have light duty and separately heavy duty transportation, and then mobile applications that range everything from industrial equipment movers to all kinds of other types of devices that use energy storage. And I should stress here that when you say the words energy storage, we don't solely mean batteries. Of course, we do mean batteries as a key part of it, but we mean many other technologies, thermal, ultracapacitors, fuel cells, mechanical, all kinds of other technologies as well. So we welcome your input and your work with us on creating this roadmap. This roadmap will be used to inform the directions that we will be taking and the state will be taking. At Capture the Energy in March 12th, the 11th and 12th, but in the afternoon of the 12th, we will have a special road mapping session. We invite you to participate in the conference, to participate in that 2-hour session where your input will be taken in these documents. And if you'd like to actually become more involved prior to that, please contact us. Lastly, I want to spend a second on new initiatives around what Denise was talking about before with regard to the economic development investments New York State is making, which are substantial. You might recall that our Commercialization Center was funded under a similar program. The picture to the right is a picture of the Z-fold winder at the new RIT prototyping center that NYBEST funded through NYSERDA funding. We also have on the left pictures of some of the prototype pilot manufacturing equipment at Eastman Business Park. We are evaluating and planning expansion of resources around 3 general areas associated with this initiative. One is around energy storage accelerator to help the industry move forward in commercialization. The second is around testing resources. We have extensive testing resources we talked to you about in Rochester, operated by DNVGL. We also are looking at potential expansions in the safety area, in the interoperability areas, controls, inverters, et cetera, that we'll be talking to people about. Lastly, we're looking at expansions to the prototyping and pilot manufacturing and light volume manufacturing that could be put in place as shared resources in New York State. So if you have ideas in these regards, we would love to talk to you further. With that said, if I can advance the slide, there we go. We have our events coming up. We have the grand opening of the RIT New York Best Prototyping Center on March 6th. The Capture the Energy Conference, which is March 11th and 12th in Troy, New York. Our Energy Storage Markets Development Conference that this year traditionally happens in New York City. We decided to move a little bit out onto Long Island this year. It's in Melville on June 25th. We have our Energy Storage Conference and Trade Show in Rochester on September 24th, and our investment conference in New York City on October 29th, along with a series of webinars in the course of the year. We certainly would welcome the people that are not members to consider membership in New York Best. I won't go over all the benefits right now in the interest of time, but please do look us up on the web and talk to us. Now we will move forward with the limited questions and answers. I realize we've run a little bit longer than we expected here, but we're quite excited to continue to talk to you about some of these areas. If you have questions, we ask you type them into the chat box on the screen. We will try to aggregate the questions and provide some answers and discussion. We've had a couple of questions already come in around the areas of New York City codes and standards and how you can put batteries into buildings. So I'll address those to John. We've seen that seen some questions here around the process for permitting. Even though it's not a standard process, what is it? Is there a risk assessment associated with it? And then we've had another question around that they've heard that energy storage is allowed, but only as a UPS. And so maybe, John, you could touch on what the overall process is, how it happens, and any risk assessment, and also the UPS issue.
Great. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So in the building code in New York City, and the fire code, battery technologies are quite limited. The technologies that are in the code include lead acid, nickel cadmium, and lithium. Lithium is a new addition actually as of this year. Now the rest of that story though is that in the fire code the listed uses for those technologies for these stationary batteries is for backup power, standby power, and emergency power. So the systems that say would participate in the demand management program that I described earlier are performing energy management in the building, and that's a different use case than was postulated for the listed technologies. So what that boils down to is whether you're in the code or not, every site right now that is considering an installation of an energy storage system needs to apply through the Office of Technology Certification and Research at the New York City Department of Buildings, and there's an associated form that goes into the Fire Department of New York at the same time. That kicks off a process that includes the vendor supplying information about the site, about the desired installation, about the technology of choice, and depending on the technology and the level of familiarity, that could be a pretty intensive exchange of information. These reviews take time. There are a couple of review boards that are convened, and they meet quarterly in one case. And so there is definitely a time element to getting some approval in place. It's as I mentioned earlier, it's a learning process for all the parties. They have been, I would consider, very active and interested parties in this discussion. We started meeting with them, Con Edison, Buildings Department, New York Best, and a few others started meetings well over a year ago now. to look at the challenges that would be faced in siting systems. So I think I touched on really the pieces of the question there. I think the overall message is there is a strong desire to get these systems in place. Con Ed has been clear that they want part of the solution for their peak load reduction to come from battery systems and from new technology battery systems. So there are agreeable parties to work with. The process itself still will take time, and so I encourage you to enter the process early in your plans to site a system.
Great, thank you, John. We've had a few questions relating to what's going on with the New York ISO and also with regard to FERC 745 and kind of globally the change of Rev in how things are controlled and run. And I think this is actually really at the heart of Rev, and it's a very interesting set of questions, which is historically our electricity grid has been controlled from the center out, and in fact, if you think about it, really all things like distributed energy resources, solar, etc., were expected to be add-ons to the grid that were expected to go away in the times of trouble and then re-emerge when the grid's been stabilized, which has led to very significant challenges in places with high solar penetration when there is instability and having them fall offline and then actually cascade the problem. One of the tenets of Rev is really to move the control of the grid very heavily toward the edges. Historically, that's the role of the ISO. And so, what we're seeing is some rethinking that is a work in progress. So we're certainly are going to be seeing work from the ISO and are seeing work from the ISO in studying these areas. They've been heavily involved in the Rev process directly and with us directly on these things. But I think it's still a work to figure out where some of these lines are drawn in control and what people are doing. And that obviously was manifest in the court decision around 745, which is part of the driver for the new tariff that Denise talked about, moving forward quickly on a new tariff for demand response in New York State, even before the main Rev rulings. We also had a set of questions about how the funding was going to be allocated under the Clean Energy Fund, and particularly about energy storage. And Denise, if you want to.
There was a question about how much of the funding will go for behind the meter. That we don't have an answer to that yet, and what we're hopeful in, and one of the reasons why the Public Service Commission asked NYSERDA to go back and provide a supplement to their original proposal is a lot of the comments and feedback that PSC got when NYSERDA submitted the proposal was there wasn't a lot of detail, that those big chunks of money weren't spelled out in more detail at a level of how much money for each type of activity. NYSERDA has taken the position and stated that they're interested in having as much flexibility as possible within those four portfolios that I discussed. So the question will be how much further definition and what level of detail will be provided for those types of activities. Right now we don't know, but we'll obviously be looking at that when the February 20th supplement comes out.
And there's another set of questions actually around access to this webinar, and Alyssa, that will be available to our members if they contact you, right?
Yep, and I will be posting it on the website as well. The recording, and then if you are interested in the slides, you can just email info@ny-best.org, and I'm happy to supply those slides to you.
Okay, great. And we actually do have a few more questions on the table, which we're not going to be able to get to here, but if you do want to reach back out to us, we will certainly be interested in getting to you on all of those. I do want to leave time, though, to make sure that we do strongly alert you of the upcoming Pepsi Energy event, which is on March 11th and 12th. We really strongly encourage your presence there. It's a great opportunity to network with the industry. And secondly, that there is a survey that will come up on your screen in a moment. We report back to our funders some of the results of how these webinars do. So we also always want to continuously improve our jobs on them. So we really look forward to your input on those surveys, and we appreciate your attendance today on the webinar. Thank you very much, and we look forward to an exciting 2015.